The Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria invests resources in affected countries, supporting them to meet the needs of the most affected communities, advancing towards the eradication of the three diseases. All of us who participate in the response, irrespective of the sector we represent, share the vision of a world free from AIDS, TB, and malaria. The Global Fund funding model is structured so that the resources are invested in 3-year cycles. The current funding cycle is from 2017 to 2019. The Global Fund has improved its response to maximize impact against AIDS, TB, and malaria. The 2017-2019 funding cycle saw the introduction of greater differentiation in the application process, greater flexibilities in emergency contexts, and enhanced focus on sustainability and transition of Global Fund grants. Communities and NGOs, especially the ones representing people affected by any or several diseases and key populations, have a crucial role in the design, delivery of services, project implementation, and monitoring and grant governance, making their participation essential for the correct functioning of the financing cycle. Since its foundation in 2002, the Global Fund has had an active commitment to involve the communities and NGOs, as well to strengthen the community-based responses and to promote human rights, gender, and gender equality in their sponsored programs. The information presented on this video can be complemented with a tool to request technical assistance available in the LAC platform. But let's start from the beginning. First, countries must develop costed national strategies or strategic plans. All Global Fund resources should be invested in support of existing national strategies. Second, the application process is where countries develop funding requests to the Global Fund, undergo an independent technical review from the Technical Review Panel, and negotiate the details through a grant-making stage. Third, once the funding request is approved, grant implementation begins. Fourth, evaluation and review should take place before the grant is finished, informing the next 3-year program in the next funding cycle. Cutting across these 4 stages is technical cooperation and reprogramming, grant sustainability, planning, and ongoing country dialogue. In each of those stages, the significant participation of the communities and NGOs, it's essential to secure that the specific needs are met, from the proposal development to implementation to the evaluation and monitoring. Meaningful community engagement is a prerequisite for any country to access the Global Fund resources. Before starting the financing process, the Global Fund communicates to each eligible country about their available allocation of funding, as well as the application approaches they are eligible for. These approaches must be oriented towards the strengthening of their health and communitarian systems, as well as their optimal functioning and response capacity. 1. Application process. The application process is divided in 4 moments and takes approximately from 6 to 9 months to complete. Funding request is when the application is prepared. Review. Completed funding requests go for review to an independent body called Technical Review Panel that assesses the quality of the proposal. They may ask for changes or make recommendations for grant making or implementation. Grant making. Once the funding request has been evaluated and approved, it moves to the grant making stage, during which details are worked out with, for example, who will be the grant implementer or principal recipient. The Global Fund promotes dual-track financing, where countries are encouraged to appoint both government and civil society principal recipients. These partners, along with the Coordinating Country Mechanism, or CCM, will determine the grant implementation details. Approval. The funding request is then presented to the Global Fund's Grant Approvals Committee, which confirms that the grant is ready to be distributed. As a final step, the board of the Global Fund approves the grant and the first tranche of funding is disbursed. 2. Grant implementation. Once that the first tranche of the funding is distributed, the implementation of the grant starts. Projects are implemented under the surveillance of the CCM and managed by the principal recipients, or PR. PRs might, through open call for tenders, contract sub-recipients according to the needs of the project and expertise of the organizations. Technical cooperation and reprogramming. Emergent needs may arise during grant implementations, which were not anticipated during funding request development. Therefore, the Global Fund allows countries to revise their programs for reprogramming their activities, or to ask for technical assistance to improve grant implementation. 3. To accomplish its objectives, the Global Fund places significant emphasis on national strategies. Countries are requested to use their national strategies of HIV, TB, or malaria as the basis for developing their funding requests to the Global Fund. Countries country dialogue. Ongoing meaningful engagement of multiple stakeholders is critical to effective global fund investments. Country dialogue is often led by the CCM, including all relevant actors involved in the response of the diseases. These stakeholders participate in an ongoing conversation about the best way to invest the available funds. Participants include governments, academia, communities, people living with or affected by the three diseases, NGOs, the private sector, and international organizations, among others. 4. Evaluation and review. All proposals must include monitoring and evaluation plans, allowing for the supervision of performance of the grant implementation. Why is the active involvement of communities of the financing cycle crucial? Because their participation ensures that in every stage of the process, affected communities' needs are met. Also, because they can propose and create friendly and effective ways of reach the communities with health information and services. Therefore, meaningful community participation, more than being a right, it's a fundamental duty, as financing can affect positively or in a negative way their lives. By meaningful, we mean that through their organizations, communities are part of the country's effective response and of the decision-making process. It also means that the involvement in grant design, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation, as well as the definition of approaches and strategies, surveillance of agreements, protection of human rights, and when they become main characters in the response of the diseases. 5. How can you get involved? Being part of your community response. Being an active member of networks and organizations of the community and NGOs in your country. Acquiring knowledge related to your government's response and the diseases situation in your country. Learning about the epidemic and the implications to your community. Raising your voice for those who, by any reason, cannot be part of the response. Monitoring the activities and making sure that all resources, human, technical, and financial, are being used as promised. Participating on the country dialogue on the topic. Actively participating on their national strategic plan elaboration for any of the diseases, or monitoring that the established goals are met. Knowing who is representing you in the decision-making spaces like the CCM and demanding results to them. Participating in the monitoring and evaluation of the grant implementation, but most of all, using your passion, commitment, and work to reach the common goal we have envisioned: a world free from HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria.